This is 5 o'clock shadow on the Pacifica Radio Network, originating from station WBAI. I'm Robert Knight in New York. Our main story today is, of course, the ongoing situation at the two nuclear power plants in Nebraska on the Missouri River, which is threatening both facilities with the potential for flooding. At our latest report, there has been an incident that resulted in the temporary disconnection from external power grid for the Fort Calhoun plant, 19 miles north of the city of Omaha. That followed the breaking early Sunday of a portable berm, a so-called aquadam, an inner tube filled with water that surrounded the nuclear power plant. As a result of that, there was a concern about water approaching a transformer farm, and so diesel power was temporarily used in order to maintain cooling and other essential systems inside the plant after that aquadam was untimely ripped, apparently by an errant tractor or other machinery and equipment. As we speak, officials are considering whether or how to replace that temporary dam. Over this weekend and on Monday, the head of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, Gregory Jaczko, visited the Fort Calhoun station as well as the Cooper station earlier. And over the weekend, he flew over the flood-encroaching Fort Calhoun nuclear power station, and we hear him now discussing with NRC officials and officials of OPPD, the Omaha Public Power District, the situation of the broken aquadam.
Yeah, you can see the deflated bladder there.
Yeah.
I was shocked that those things aren't segmented in any way.
Yeah.
Actually, they are put in segments. I think they were segments. That appears to be for ease of installation, not for any
long-term integrity.
Yeah, or single finger-proof type thing. Once one part went, the whole thing went. So.
You know, it's interesting because it was not, one of the more rigorous safety systems that we tend to, it's really not, the overall safety of the plant wasn't based around that kind of a structure, and it's almost, in a way, unfortunate. I think the plant made a lot of the fact that they had that, and look how good we're keeping all the water back, and it just wasn't a particularly reliable system, and it's almost had the opposite effect now that people have, reacted and thought, well, that burst, so there's something going wrong, or there's a problem, or whatever the case may be, and realistically, it's not really changed much.
Chairman, you can see the earthen berm they built around the 345 kV switch yard.
Yeah.
And that's grade level 1,006.
Okay.
NRC Chair Gregory Jaczko flying over the flood-encroached nuclear power station Fort Calhoun in Nebraska, 20 miles north of Omaha. In order to put that event and other nuclear issues in perspective, we are joined now by nuclear engineer and former nuclear power plant operator Arnie Gundersen of Fairwinds Associates. Welcome back, Arnie.
Hi, thanks for having me.
A lot of people have been waiting to hear from you, and can you take your time and explain in detail the series of breathtaking events that have been occurring at Fort Calhoun?
Yes, I can. To begin with, floods are different than tsunamis. You have a warning that a flood is coming, and you don't when a tsunami comes. And Fort Calhoun was shut down in April for a refueling, and they elected not to start up again because they saw the flood coming. And that's a really important point, and one in their benefit, actually. What happens in a nuclear reactor is that when a uranium atom splits, 95% of the power is generated. But those pieces that it splits into are called fission products, and they give another 5% of the heat. Well, that's the problem that occurred at Fukishima. The reactor had been running, and it had 5% of its heat left over. Now, 5% doesn't sound like much, but on a reactor like Fukushima, that's about 125,000 horsepower of heat that has to be gotten rid of. But the people at Fort Calhoun were smart, and they did not start up. So while there's still decay heat at Fort Calhoun, it's been shut down now since April, and the decay heat is a lot less than it would have been at the had the flood hit it when it was operating. So I give 1 point to the people at Fort Calhoun for not starting back up when they knew the flood was coming. Now, the NRC said last year that if the water level got to 1,010 feet, right now it's at 107, so 3 feet to go. At 110 feet, the NRC said last year there was 100% chance that the nuclear reactor core would be damaged, but that assumed it was running. So the good news is that it's not running, and right now the flood is at 107 feet. So there's still a couple feet of freeboard to go here before it begins to get into safety systems. I'm still concerned, but I think people are sending me emails, and I'm sure they've been sending you emails, that can this become the next Fukushima? And the answer is no, because the decay heat is much, much less. There still could be problems cooling the core, etc. But again, the decay heat is the key here. And because of what the people did at Fort Calhoun, they're much better off than Fukushima was.
Arnie Gundersen, I'd like to go through some details about the mandatory reporting from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission in regard to specifically Fort Calhoun. And in an NRC event notice of 27 June 2011, there is this item: both emergency diesel generators supplying plant emergency buses per plant procedure. And the notice says as follows: at approximately 01:25 hours Central Daylight Time, the Aqua Dam, providing enhanced flood protection for Fort Calhoun Station Unit 1, failed. At 2:21, as a precautionary measure, diesel generator 2 was automatically started per plant procedure to divorce bus 1A4 from off-site power. At 02:50, diesel generator 1 was automatically started to divorce bus 1A3. Both emergency diesel generators loaded on buses as designed. 345 kilovolts and 161 kilovolts off-site power remain available. What does that mean in terms of the on and off?
Yeah, isn't it amazing? Now, here's a plant that's designed to produce electricity, and it desperately needs electricity to avoid a meltdown. What happened was when the Aqua Dam failed, they were concerned that water would get into the switchyard, and that's not in the power plant, but that's a little bit removed, and there's another Aqua Dam around that. If water got into the transformers in the switchyard, the power going into the plant would be lost. So there's power right now. Fort Calhoun is receiving power from other power plants in Nebraska, and it's coming in by land to the switchyard, which is surrounded. And if it didn't have its own aqua dams, it would be flooded as well. So when the first aqua dam failed, they were concerned that off-site power might be lost. So they have 2 diesel generators in the plant